Today we're going to talk about how to tell students you love them when you can't put your arms around them, look them in the eye and say, I care about you and I love you. And I think that's one of the hardest things we have to do as online instructors. iLearn has given us 4 great tools to do this. We have email, discussion board, announcements, and feedback. And we should be using all 4 of those to truly, effectively let our students know how much we care about them. Whatever we say, it's all about the tenor of how we say it. The tenor is the drift of something that is written, or the concept or object that you're trying to convey to them. In other words, is what I said what I really meant? And that's one thing to really watch. As we go through this discussion, let's watch and find ways that we can be sure that we're saying what we meant to say. So whatever you say, don't just say it with love, mean it with love. Christ gave us 2 commandments that really depicted the central theme of the gospel: to love God and to love our fellow men. Now, it's really easy to love the students who tell us how wonderful we are. It's not so easy to love those students who have a complaint about every single thing going on in the class. How many of you have had those students? They're out there. There's one in every class. And we are instructed to love those, even those who don't love us. And so with that thought in mind, let's move forward and see some of the things we can do. First of all, let's talk about some general email etiquette. What are some things you would come up with? I've got a list of things here, but what are some things you think of when you think of email etiquette?
I remember this from the training, which is never respond in time. Like if they're very heightened and agitated, take a minute and just respond.
Perfect. Yes.
Sorry, if I get an email that has a Discord to it, I always start with thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for contacting me.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking the time to reach out about this problem that you're experiencing. Because I feel like that always sets the tone, and it puts it in my mind that as we're training them, teaching them, that I certainly have been in positions where I felt it was difficult, and the first thing that needs to be felt is for them to be validated and understood.
Very good, very good. Anybody else? Let's go. Edit.
It's so embarrassing when they reply to your email and it comes back and I look down to see, okay, now what exactly did I write? And I find these errors and how did those get in?
Yeah, you and your, those are my 2.
Oh, I just said encouragement.
Encouragement is so good. Okay, let's go through the list that I have. Many of them you've already mentioned, but the first one I come up with is spell their name right. Learn to know the student well enough to know how to spell their name. And that could be really difficult when you have students in Singapore, or Ghana. My name is Sandi with an I, not Lisa with an S. You have to be old enough to know to get that. Spell check the document. We've had that. Read the email out loud to ensure that you're saying what you meant to say. Now, you don't always have to do this, but if it's a really important reply, read it out loud or somehow go over it so that you know what it sounds like. A lot of times when you're reading an email, you said, I really care about how you feel, but what they hear is, yeah, I really care about you. So be sure when you read it out loud, it says what you mean.
I was just going to say, I read it to my husband a lot, and he'll be like, you sound like a jerk.
I use the same technique. And sometimes he'll say, you're not strong enough in what you're saying. So that's a good way to do it. And then we talked about this one. If your email is emotionally charged, take a minute. I had a student the very first semester I taught in 2000 online. I taught. And I had a student send me a nasty gram. I should have kept it, but I chose to just blank out what he said. But it was really, really rude, and I was so angry. How could he say that to me when I was so concerned about what the class was learning, and I was putting my heart and soul into this. How could he feel that way? And I was able to stop. And this was not at a church school, but I stopped and I prayed about it, and I reread, and I tried to unassume, you know, I wasn't assuming that he was angry, but just that he was poorly expressing himself. And then go in and write a reply, read it out loud, think about it a little longer, read it out loud. And this is if it's really emotionally charged discussion. You want to really stop and pause and be sure you're doing it right.
The difficulty I had, and I told you about this, but I had somebody call me in the middle of the afternoon and blasted into me. And I was not even prepared for that. Email gives you a chance to
Yes.
go, you know. Anyway, so it did not go well, but I was able to call him back and say, okay, I don't think that conversation went maybe as well as it could have gone. Here's what I was trying to communicate with you.
And you know, that's an important thing, that we're not afraid to say to the student, you know, I was wrong. Or I've had students teach me things, how I teach advanced word processing, and I'll have students teach me something that Microsoft Word does that I didn't know, and I know Word like the back of my hand. And I always give kudos for that. I always admit I was wrong, or I didn't know that, or something. And I think it's really good for the students to know that you don't know everything.
In working with students in other capacities, not as teaching, but having some of those moments where a student just comes at you so charged up, and you may not be prepared for that, or in some cases their parents come at you so
Yes.
I actually was caught a trick by somebody else who said, you know, in those moments when you're so not prepared for it, you say, you know what, I really appreciate that you're reaching out to talk to me about this. I am not in a circumstance where I'm able to help you with this at this moment where I feel like I would be giving you my best self. Could you please put your concerns down in an email so that I can individually address each concern that you have and make sure that I'm meeting all of those things? It's kind of like an escape at the moment, because we're not always prepared to meet those things, and then it also requires them to put them down without quite as much emotion as they would if they were face to face or on the phone.
I actually do that on my job. If I have one of my employees upset at another employee for something, I'll say to them, send me an email and tell me exactly what you're upset about. And then 9 times out of 10, I can say, well, 100 times out of 100, actually, I can say, what you need to do is blah, 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 blah. And then we can just solve the problem quietly. Nobody gets emotionally charged. And I feel like that's a really good point. But you handled it well, to not be afraid to admit to the student that you realized that this was not the best, and go back and make it right. And then double check to be sure the email is being sent to the right person. That's it. The final thing on email etiquette is every email from your student should be answered within 24 hours. If it doesn't, you probably missed the boat to help them. I find that my students will email me 5 minutes before the assignment is due. Well, I'm not on my computer to help them then. There's nothing you can do about that. But the next day when I'm doing my email and I am on my computer, I can say, I see you sent me an email yesterday 5 minutes before the assignment was due. Do you need to have some extra help with this? Do I need to give you a little extra time? And I give them an out for the fact that they acted stupid. But I let them recognize they acted stupid by waiting to 5 minutes before the assignment was due. And then I offer them an option to help them with that. Okay, so here's a problem. And we've actually talked about this. Avoid assuming the intent of the email. A student email came in that said, you marked my paper wrong. I know I got it right. You need to fix this so it won't affect my grade. So I came up with some really good responses. Here's my first. That's what I wanted to say.
Right, that's what you want to say.
But instead, there are two other options I came up with. One, a scenario when I'm right, and one, a scenario when I'm wrong. So in this one I said, I'm sure you didn't mean to sound rude in your email. And then I went on to explain, I checked the assignment, you're correct. I was wrong, and I fixed it. You'll notice it on your grade. And then the second was, again, I started out, I'm sure you didn't mean to be rude in your email, but I was right, you were wrong, and from the rubric, these are the reasons you missed points. So there's no doubt in the student's mind exactly what I was doing.
I appreciate that you gave them feedback though about the tone of their mouth in both of those instances.
I think that's important. I'm a TGL, and one of the teachers in my group actually had an instance like this, and we had a little discussion, between him and my TGL and I on how to handle this. And that was one of the things that came up, that you need to point out to them if they're being rude. I'm sure you didn't mean it that way, or do you realize how combative that sounded? Something like that, so that they know, they become aware of what they're doing. A lot of people just don't know email etiquette. For instance, you'll probably have a lot of students who will send emails in all capital letters, and they don't know that means they're yelling. So it doesn't hurt to just put out a little something to say, by the way, all capital letters means you're yelling at me. This one I love. This was from a lady who was moving from Florida to Utah. She had her son getting baptized. They had packed up and they were coming in. Her son was getting baptized the next day. Her parents were there. She was trying to unpack. Everything was going right. People were sick. I mean, the email was this long, but in it she said, I should have everything caught up by Tuesday, and I don't want you to think poorly of me. So in a case like that, I think it's important that we tell the student that it's okay, that we understand. Excuse me, I need to find a Kleenex. I told her not to fret, that there's plenty of time, and that her son's baptism was far more important than getting an assignment into me on a specific date. And gave her, it said she had given me a time, then I felt it was fair for me to say, go ahead and take that time. And in fact, if you need a couple of more days, that's okay. So by my being kind back to her, she knew I cared. And then I followed up with her a week later and said, how did the baptism go? Have you got settled in? How are things going? Do you feel comfortable? Do you need more time? What's going on? And then she felt like I really cared about her and has kind of become a good friend. All right, so this one could be either email or discussion board. The students send an email that said, there's no tutor for my class. What are you going to do for me? Well, read the book like everybody else, do the assignments, But instead, what I did was tell them that I appreciated the fact that they felt they needed a tutor, but that's why we have a discussion board. And so in my class, the discussion board is full of questions by the students. I really push the discussion board.
How do you push the discussion board? Because we've had one and nobody wants to use it.
Well, first of all, I have a discussion board for each week. So there's never a long list of things you have to go through to find the most current thing. So, and then in that discussion board, the purpose of that discussion board is for us to talk to each other about what we're doing, problems we're having, and how we've solved them. There's not a specific assignment of how many times you have to go into the discussion board. It's strictly a place where the students can talk to each other, and mine is really active. So
we have one like that, and I don't know how to get them to use it. We call it the student lounge, where they can.
Yeah, mine's called Cafe 240 because I teach B240.
But they won't. Suggestions on how to encourage them to use it.
First of all, it's in my syllabus that that's what it is and what it's for. Second, any student who asks me a question on email, I suggest to them that they put the question in the discussion board, and I'll answer by email, and I'll also answer in the discussion board. And I just copy and paste my answer, so it's not like I do double work. Third, I say to students right at the beginning, in one of my, I have a live chat every week with my students during my office hours on Adobe Connect. So in there, I say to them, I have students who are in 2010, and the class is a Word 2010 class. I also have students who have 2013. Well, it's a different software. And so I suggest to them, those of you who are having this particular problem, or students on a Mac, if you're having a particular problem, start a discussion this week in the discussion board about things that you found different in 2013. So I push, I don't just put it there, but I talk about it in my chat. It's in my syllabus, and when they email me, I say, will you put this in the discussion board, because I'm sure other students have the same question, unless it's something really personal. In my syllabus, what I say to them is the discussion board is for all your questions, unless it's something private, then email me. And so that's how I've been able to encourage them to get in there. Another thing is that I have a lot of students who are well over 50, and they're very, very participatory in that. Okay. All right, so feedback. I have some students who are continuously late getting in assignments, and what I do is I send out a weekly reminder to those students, because there's usually only 2 or 3. And so I set a little schedule for myself to send them a weekly reminder. You have such and such due on Wednesday and such due on Saturday, to help them get it in. But even more importantly, my feedback, and my slide doesn't really convey this, my feedback is directed to the student. So if they get 100% on the assignment, they get a woohoo, or a you did great, or something like that. But if they miss something, so I can see they really didn't learn the concept, then my feedback says, you did really well on this assignment. You only missed one thing. You were supposed to da 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 da. Here's how you do that. Look on page such and such, and then sometimes I'll put in a little clip art or something that shows them what they did wrong, or where they need to go to find what they didn't do right. Occasionally I'll say, you didn't use dot leader tabs. You just pressed the period a whole bunch of times. And dot leader tabs are on the final. You may want to go back and learn that. So students really like that. They feel like I actually looked at their assignment. I know what they did right, and I know what they did wrong. And then also on my feedback, you know, you can make those little template feedback. So my template feedback is their name, the important parts of this assignment were, and then I'll put in dot leaders, indenting, you know, or whatever yours is. And then I can say, you did really well on the dot leaders. You missed out on the indenting, and you fixed that here. So that they can see that I actually did look at the assignment. As an online student, it just really irritated me to be able to tell the teacher didn't really read my paper. They didn't really read it. I can tell by their feedback. So I try to make sure that the students know that I really do pay attention to what they did individually. In President Clark's very first address to us, he said, we should be teaching with general individual mentoring where the student knows they are loved. And that is really the heart of what I'm telling you. Each student needs to know that you love them individually. Now, another thing I do on my announcements and on my discussion board, I put out announcements for birthdays, babies that are born, weddings that take place, because we've all got that going on in our classes all the time, and I'll come to that in just a minute. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the discussion board. I allow my students to be verbose. They can say whatever they want to say. They can say a lot, or they can say one sentence, whichever they prefer. And then I interject when I really do have a comment. I don't interject just because I should, but I'm sure that I do make comments. Then I decide if it's appropriate to give feedback to every single student in the discussion, and I have 3 or 4 a year where every student who posts something, I say something specific about what they said. The rest of them, I just interject when I feel it's necessary. But those particular assignments, I know the students have thought hard about what they're going to say, and I want them to know that I read it, that I'm a part of this class, that I care about what they said, and what they said had some value to me. I just finished one of the sessions I went to was using stories in your teaching, and in that particular class I thought, well, that's one of the things I do in my discussion board. I share little brief story, 1-paragraph stories about when I was a legal secretary, da, 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 and they can see how what they have just learned today is going to be valuable to them in the real world. Make your presence known. Be sure that you are supportive and positive. Keep criticism off the public board. If someone is being really obnoxious on the public board, take it to email and suggest that there may be a better way for them to do it. Okay, announcements. I'm big on announcements. I have students come in my class and say, my teacher never used announcements. I keep forgetting to look there. Well, that's where they go to get the link to my chat. That's where they go to find out if somebody's had a baby. Oh, I didn't put that one on there. We had somebody have their first baby, and then 2 weeks later they got baby goats. So I put those in the announcements and told the student, put pictures in the discussion group. So in the discussion group, we got a picture of the baby, and we got pictures of baby goats, and stories about what are happening. And so our discussion group becomes really fun. Sometimes I put a joke in. Whenever I put the link to my chat, I always put something else with it. A virtual treat. You've worked really hard this week. The lessons this week were really hard. Stop and have a little treat on me. Or I'll put a joke in, or I'll offer encouragement. And then once a week in the announcements, I bear my testimony. I try to find something. That's why Sunday school is so important to me. I try to find something from something in Sunday school, something from my scripture reading, something from a conference talk, without putting so much time into it that it becomes laborious, but just I keep it in mind all the time that I'm looking for something I can share with my students, and then I can put it on the discussion, the announcements, and that draws students to the announcements as well. And when you do that, so the students get used to going to the announcements, then when you have something you need everybody to know, and you know if you send an email, only half of them are going to read it, put it in the announcements, and nobody can say, well, you didn't tell me, because it's there for everybody. So in conclusion, display love for your students by showing them that you love them, and promote the university citizenship through constant communication. Your students should all hear from you regularly in some way, either through feedback, email, announcements, or discussion board. Participate in every classroom discussion board. Now I know if they're in groups, they're working on something, so there's a little disclaimer in there, don't bother the groups, allow that to be private. But as an online student, when I had a professor and I was in a group and the professor came into our group, then the professor was careful to do one of two things. Say, you guys are really on track. Keep going. You're going in the right direction. Or, you've really missed the boat. You need to reconsider this aspect of what you're doing. So if you do go into their discussion group, be sure that you're only doing one of two things. You're not commenting on individually what they're saying, so they can feel free to continue to say. Send out regular emails to those who are struggling. I have a student right now whose best friend just committed suicide, and she is just devastated. She's having a hard time just functioning, let alone getting in homework. And so I have sent her, as an example, I found the 7 steps of grieving and sent her that to help her get through the grieving process. And I sent her an email just saying to her, I see that you're late with your assignment. Would you like a couple of more days? And how are you doing? That kind of thing. So reach out to your students who are struggling. And then make a weekly announcement to encourage students to continue trying. And this, it's important to let them know that you are present, that you are a professor and not a facilitator. You are there to teach them. They set these up and they give us the class and they say, well, you don't have to do anything but just grade papers and, but that's not what we are trained to do. We need to be teachers and let the students know that you love them, you care for them, you're there, you're present in the class. You be active in the discussion board. I'd like to hear back from you and find out if you came up with some things that you did. So right after, we'll make contact. Because anything I can learn about how to make discussion board better, I would love to learn. I think we've got about 5 minutes left. Do any of you have questions or comments that you'd like to add? Eleanor?
Well, I'm like, I guess I'm a little confused by the discussion board issue because in the way that our class is set up, now I don't know if when we're talking about discussion board, we're talking about to teach one another. Is that what we're talking about?
That's the one that I comment on every single time.
Okay, so we are talking about teach one another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's really where they go and they give feedback to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to put their assignment. They're supposed to get feedback from 2 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure what my role in that would be when they're primarily supposed to be peer review, not me review.
Well,
So I tend to kind of stay out of that because I feel like if it was an on-campus experience, it's the equivalent of me and him going into a separate room to study and the professor showing up. And that's
I
not
would
what
feel
want.
that way if it was done in a group discussion. Mine is the whole class. Is yours a group? Are they divided into groups or is it the whole class?
No, like I would post it and you would say, Eleanor, I'll review your document.
Oh, okay. No, mine's different than that. Mine is, they don't have to do a whole document for mine. However, after listening to several of these things, they're going to have to next semester. Mine is they put up what they want to teach everybody else and what they've learned for the week. And then right in the discussion board, other people give them feedback on. I found that helpful too. I used it in my church calling when I was trying to make a bookmark for, and every one of those, I comment on every single one of those. So what they've taken the time to think about what they've learned and how they've used it, then I go in and that's where I use my little stories. So I say, wow, I just had to use that, compare side by side today at work, and it saved me so much time and blah, blah, blah. And so,
Ours is supposed to be a dyad.
so it makes it different for everyone.
Supposed to do it. You post it, somebody else is supposed to read yours. She
Yeah.
posts it, somebody else is supposed to read hers.
Yeah,
Is yours written into your course or did you put it in there?
it's written into my course that way. But the discussion board that I was talking about, there's one for every week, I put that in. And that is just this is open, come in here and bring your questions, everybody participates. And I go in on a regular basis and either answer the question myself or say, Jane gave you the right answer, way to go, Jane. So that they know that they're at least on the right track. That's how I participate in that. So, and that's a problem we have because everybody's discussion board is a little different. So I don't have an answer for that, but we would like to talk to you some more about it, see if maybe we could brainstorm some things.
One of the things, I just try to think of the purpose of discussion boards. But if you look at that discussion board and think, okay, what is the purpose? And if the purpose really is just for them to have 2 other students peer review their post or their whatever it is that they submit, yeah, then really the only thing you can do as an instructor, you can say, well, so what was my purpose here? Well, to be present and show them that I'm paying attention and that I love them. So you could come in and say, great, thanks for this, I love this thread, great comments by student number 1 or student number 2, which is kind of what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's the only thing you can do if there's not really a,
yeah.
that's not really a
and I could do that, but that's really about the extent of what I feel like would be helpful.
Each discussion board has different purposes. In some courses they're really great, in some courses they're not so great. So yeah, you have to look at.
But I really highly recommend that you make a Cafe 240 or whatever you want to call yours for the students to come in and just talk to each other and make sure that the talk to each other is course directed. Not that they can't say, I just had my first baby and here it is, but if you emphasize that it's course directed, then it will become purposeful in the class. All right, thank you very much.
How would that be different for the underneath notes from instructor, where they can post questions there?
Mine it's an actual, I put it in at the very bottom of so for my week, I have notes from the instructor, the assignments, blah, 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 and then Cafe 240 is at the bottom of that. So they can just click on it and go in. It's completely separate from them. It's not in a folder, a subfolder. It's all by itself. Okay. All right, thank you.